Oh, shit. Did you stop to prepare for your fantasy football draft this Sunday? Or is it tomorrow, even Saturday? Well, don't worry. If you didn't prepare and you need to cram, Garbage Time Fantasy Football has an emergency last minute mock draft for you. It's time for Garbage Time. Guys, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight it is myself, Joe, running solo, and we have an emergency last-minute mock draft for those of you doing PPR drafts for you guys tonight. If you guys like what you see on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show. You can also listen to us in audio formats on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And if you'd like to leave us voicemails, you can do that at www.garbagetimeff.com on the right side of your screen, where you can leave us voicemails and hate mails. And without further ado, guys, let's get some news out of the way so we can get to this draft quickly.
News updates.
Make sure to join us this upcoming Wednesday, guys, for the Megala Bowl. We are part of the Fantasy Footballers Megala Bowl, and we will be drafting live in front of the Heckling Fandom this Wednesday, where you can make fun of us for our picks or endear us if you actually think they're well. And not only that, I'm super excited because, as you guys know, I'm a Jets fan, and I will be wearing that Elijah Moore jersey 1 o'clock next Sunday, watching my team break my heart once again. First little bit of news we have on the record for you guys before we get into next Thursday's games. That's right, football is back starting Thursday. ESPN's Dan Graziano reports that the Titans have a major role planned for Treylon Burks. I don't believe this report from Dan Graziano. We've been seeing the writing on the wall with Treylon Burks all offseason. He's been playing below the fifth wide receiver on that team. And outside of Robert Woods on that team being the number one wide receiver, I don't believe you can really trust any of those weapons in the Titans offense, because it's going to be a predominantly heavy running game this year. And just there's no smoke here from what is coming from Dan Graziano's reports here. Everything on the field and everything we've been seeing in practice has been saying Treylon Burks is not going to touch the field, at least early in the season. So what you guys really need to do to pick off some wins early in your fantasy football season is to ignore him initially and potentially look to get him off waivers if they look to work him in. He is way too much of a risk, and there is much better weapons that you can get the back end of your drafts to help your fantasy teams out in week one. And if those players don't work out, drop them in week one and try something else. One of those weapons, though, is not going to be Treylon Burks after week one. And I really hope I'm not going to be eating crow for saying that. Next up, Rams coach Sean McVay said Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are good to go. Not to shit on this parade here, but listen, this is the opening game starting Thursday. If you have better options out there from two running backs that are coming off soft tissue injuries, one, Cam Akers, who couldn't walk last Monday, is now going to be going against the stout Bills run defense, use a different option. If you have a Rashad Penny, play a Rashad Penny. I really do not like Cam Akers for that first game. Maybe as your flex spot, but I really wouldn't even feel comfortable playing him there in week one. I really think you need to look elsewhere and rest Cam Akers for at least another week or two, especially against such a stout Bills defense. I think the game script is going to call for passing early by the Bills, and I think the Rams may get behind initially early. I do ultimately think they'll win the game, but they're going to have to abandon the run, and Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are not in the best health as of right now. The game formula does not dictate that Cam Akers is going to have 100 yards in that first game. Look for a replacement level player if he's already on your fantasy rosters. Speaking of wide receivers for the Rams too, Rams coach Sean McVay says Van Jefferson is making good progress with that knee. This is another player, guys. He's currently a wide receiver 3 on the Rams. Not highly fantasy relevant, but it's a high-powered offense that you could potentially use him in dynasty leagues, keep him on the bench and see what they do with him. But you also have to be aware that the Rams may end up re-signing Odell Beckham halfway through the season when that ACL is healing up. Not that Odell Beckham will probably be very effective straight off an injury, but that will push him even farther down the depth chart. So I do not see Van Jefferson outside of an injury to one of these top 2 wide receivers, Kupp and Robinson, being very effective for fantasy football this year. Speaking of players coming off injuries, Zach Wilson, during a team lunch outing, it was a public event, said he will be ready for week 1. Now, does that mean he's actually going to play in week 1? I'm kind of doubting that he's actually going to play in week 1. The reason for that is a quarterback is always going to say they're going to be ready for week 1. But is the coaching staff going to allow them to play in week 1, especially against such a good Ravens defense where the offensive line is still going to be gelling and they haven't had a lot of time to play together considering the injuries on that line? I think they're going to be bringing Joe Flacco out for the Ravens revenge game week 1. I'm going to it. Not highly confident that they're going to win, but, weird things happen in week 1 and maybe they can get the upset. But from a fantasy football perspective, especially in super flex formats, Zach Wilson is not going to be playing in week 1, I believe. So this is going to be something that you can evaluate right up to game time. And I believe the coaches will not tip their hand right up until game time. But I believe Joe Flacco will be going out there for the passing game of the New York Jets. But I believe Joe Flacco is a competent enough quarterback to run the offense. And you could see someone like Elijah Moore, who I think is going to be their number 1 wide receiver, end up breaking out this year. That's really going to be the outfit. Justin, I really do hope that the Jets will win too. I'm going to the game. I'm going to be pumped up about it. I don't feel very comfortable with the game script. The Ravens always play very physical, and our team just never plays very well against them. No, would I absolutely love the upset? Yes. Am I going to be rooting for them? Is my heart going to be saying they're going to beat them? Yes. But as a practical Jets fan and a fantasy player that likes to play with his head, I just don't feel like it's going to be likely. But it's the most talent we've had on a team. I think they're going to hang tough in that game. It's not going to be a blowout by any means, but fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. Next little bit of news that I have for you guys tonight is Lions GM Brad Holmes believes Jameson Williams with the ACL injury is ahead of schedule and is in his recovery and is expected to have an accelerated return. Listen, he is already on the PUP. That means he's going to be out for a minimum of 4 weeks. But this kind of makes for an interesting fact if you guys are drafting for this upcoming weekend. If you can get Jameson Williams late in your draft, draft him. Put him on your PUP, and this will allow you to take someone else off waivers right after the draft. And it's almost like having an extra player on your roster as long as one of the players that you didn't take during your draft are not hurt. Justin is right here with another comment saying Akers and Henderson is going to be a 50-50 split. Justin, I absolutely believe that you're right about this being a 50-50 split. It's going to be bad for fantasy football, especially where Cam Akers is currently being taken at his current ADP. I think he is going to be a big disappointment for fantasy football this year. Both of them have soft tissue injuries. And the game formula for them going up against the Bills in week 1, especially considering, as I already stated earlier in the show, that Cam Akers can barely walk, and he didn't walk last Monday. I think he's going to be in for a disappointing week 1, and you should look at other options on your bench if you have them in the flex spot. So, again, this is the big warning for the week and on opening night. Don't play Cam Akers if you have other options at the running back. You have to be pretty desperate, I think, to play him in week 1, and I don't think he's anything more than a flex option. Just, you got to be careful with that position. Anyway, getting back to Jameson Williams here, if he's on par for an accelerated return, you may see something out of him in the second half of the year. I think that Lions offense is a little bit underrated. I think it can perform well for some wide receivers. I believe Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to perform very well this year, and they're going to coax Jameson back very slowly. But, hey, keep him on your bench initially when you draft him, move him down off your roster, and then you can take someone else off of waivers. So that's an option for you if you have the opportunity. But hey, give him a shot. Maybe it'll work out for you in the second half of the season. NESN, Zach Cox believes it would not be a shock if Ramondre Stevenson leapfrogs Damian Harris as the Patriots' early down back. I simply believe this is the case as well. I mean, he's been getting all the detriment and all the detriment of all that news all offseason, and they believe that he could leapfrog Damian Harris. And I think the Patriots are kind of tipping their hand to this. And Bill Belichick doesn't typically tip his hand to this. Although we have doubted Damian Harris before, and he comes out and has great double-digit touchdown years and just falls right into the end zone. They're both kind of being taken in the same range. It feels like Ramondre Stevenson currently has more upside. Their third down back is no longer on the team, so that leaves a little bit more work for both of them. But I think if Ramondre Stevenson shows out as a more balanced back like he is, he could cut into that early down work too. So it'll be interesting to see how that really works out. A little bit more news that I want to share with you guys tonight too is that the Philadelphia Eagles have picked up Trey Sermon off the 49ers, who cut him, but I do not believe that Trey Sermon is going to have any fantasy viability for that team this season, for the simple fact that they have Miles Sanders there, and behind him is anyone but Trey Sermon. I do not think he's going to be relevant for fantasy football. They brought in the kid last year who played for Memphis. They are going to be looking to potentially get him on the field this year. There are much better options for you to evaluate at the back end of your rosters. So with that, guys, let's get into our mock draft and see what we can do for you from the 9th position. So what I wanted to do and get the feeling for this mock draft is draft from the 9th position in a PPR format, so we have a little bit more depth and we have to go a little bit deeper during this mock draft to give you guys a feel of those deeper players that you may be going to. A lot of your leagues may be 10-team, some of them may be 12-team, but if we go a little bit deeper and draft for such a difficult position, we can balance out a roster and help out the guys at the back end of the draft. So let's get into it.
Cannot play with them, cannot win with them, cannot coach with them, can't do it. I want winners.
And here we go. Off the board first is Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson. So the 3-tier and top-end wide receivers go off the board right there, and Najee Harris. And this puts me on the clock at the number 9 spot. Now, in live drafts, both in PPR and redraft, this combination has happened to me a few times. And that's Dalvin Cook falling to the number 9 spot. Dalvin Cook could potentially be a top 3 running back in fantasy football and be an absolute PPR monster. So for the next and last time, guys, last mock draft of the offseason, I'm going to take Dalvin Cook in the 9th spot because this would be an absolute gift to you following in a PPR format. The Rams offense is coming to Minnesota per their new head coach, and he would be an excellent pick for you. Next off the board after that was Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Joe Mixon, and this is very typical of a home regular draft. DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb, and Travis Kelce, and this puts me back on the clock. If you are new fantasy football players, something to do to balance out your team early, especially in PPR format, is go running back heavy. It's the simplest strategy in fantasy football. And if you don't want to get too fancy on your first term and do solid, follow this strategy. Another player that you can comfortably take in the 2nd round in this spot is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara has been dropping in fantasy drafts this year because of what happened in the offseason in Vegas. But listen, his issues got pushed down the field. He is not going to be facing a suspension this year. He is a PPR nightmare because in that Saints offense, he catches the ball. He's a good runner, and he was easily a top 10 back before his injury last year. Off the board after that was CeeDee Lamb, Aaron Jones, Deebo Samuel, who was also an excellent 2nd-round pick, I believe, this year. Saquon Barkley, who has got top 5 running back potential. Josh Allen, who is way too early to take in a PPR format and separation. Tyreek Hill, Williams, Mark Andrews, Keenan Allen, Brown, Kyle Pitts, Leonard Fournette, George Kittle, who I believe is still a little bit too early for you, Higgins, Elliott, and Evans. We have some more comments here. Keep grinding, man. You're doing an awesome job. Thanks, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show. We will keep pumping out content for you guys. All right, let's see what we've got here. We've got 2 running backs in the first rounds and in a PPR format. It's important to, at least at this point, probably get your first wide receiver, and one that is being evaluated by many people as someone that could potentially fall to you in the 3rd round and give you that wide receiver 1 upside based on the fact that his quarterback is being slightly undervalued this year, is Michael Pittman for the Colts. Matt Ryan has been underrated because of his lack of play last year with the Falcons. But listen, it's going to be a nice balanced offense there with Jonathan Taylor. He's got a good offensive line, and we've seen in the past that he can make his wide receivers play very well for fantasy football. And Michael Pittman ascended last year, and we may see him ascend even further this year. Off the board after that is Connor, Herbert, Mahomes. So the top 3 quarterbacks are now off the board. Cam Akers, who I think is going to disappoint fantasy owners this year. Travis Etienne, who could be good for Jacksonville. David Montgomery, and this puts me back on the clock. So from this spot, I'm going to evaluate probably 2 positions here because I've already got my top 2 running backs and a wide receiver. So this is just something simply you can do for most strategies. We'll see what's at the tight end position here. There's Darren Waller and Dalton Schultz. They're probably the top 5 and 6 tight ends this year if you're looking to take something from this late in the draft. But again, you want to take those players that have higher upside. And in this format, we're doing 3 wide receivers, 2 flex. So there's a lot of positions that you can take. What I think I'm going to really do, though, is I'm going to fall on another wide receiver. And the one I'm going to pick is Jalen Waddle. Is a little bit concerning coming off of 3 weeks without practice, but I love his upside in that Miami offense. So he's going to be the pick for me here today. Justin has a comment here. Says, I had a 10-man PPR, 1 quarterback team. I got 1 QB, Lamar, running back, CMC, Barkley, AJ Dillon, Cook, Gordon, Hines, Henderson, wide receiver, Pittman, Sutton, A-Rob, Juju, Olave, and Kelsey. Solid-ass team, man. Solid-ass team. I like what you've got there. Off the board after him was Breece Hall, DK, Darren Waller, Deontay Johnson, Josh Jacobs, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Lamar Jackson, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, who's going to play good with Baker Mayfield this year, Joe Burrow, who I think is going to help win some leagues this year, Marquise Hollywood Brown, who is going to be the number 1 wide receiver of the Cardinals this year, Allen Robinson, who could be a number 1 wide receiver for the Rams. Yes, they could have 2 this year for fantasy football. Antonio Gibson, who is unfortunately rising because of what happened to Brian Robinson, Dalton Schultz, and the COD player himself, Kyler Murray. And this puts me back on the clock with 1:15. So I'm evaluating the top overall positions here and seeing what's left on the board. This is the point of the draft where there's not going to be a lot of differentiation between quarterback points. And if you're playing in a 1 quarterback league, you can get one of those middling guys and do very well in your league. So I'm going to just take the player with the biggest upside at this point. And I think the player with the biggest upside at this point, looking at how the board fell and the way my team is falling with 3 wide receiver, 2 flex options, is Mike Williams. Listen, he's a part of a very high-powered offense. I understand that he's a little bit of a scary option because of what happened with him late last year. But what he did early in the season made him look damn good, and he's got another year with his star quarterback there. Off the board after that is J.K. Dobbins, Elijah Mitchell. God knows what happens with that 49ers backfield. We never know. But he's a good option for you in the 5th round, too. Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, Brandon Cooks, who is always underrated by the fantasy community. That's someone else that you could have taken in that spot, too, in the draft. And A.J. Dillon, who I think is going to be a big part of the Green Bay offense, along with his counterpart at the running back position because, listen, the passing work can go to the other running back. A.J. Dillon can get 1st and 2nd down, and I think that's what might end up happening. So let's reevaluate what's here and see what I can get here in the 6th round. I mean, Jalen Hurts is staring at me here. Rushing upside, and he's fallen to me at this point. I really would be hard-pressed not to take him, considering there's really nothing at the tight end position. I'm nice and comfortable with my top 2 running backs here and my 3 wide receivers. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jalen Hurts here in the 6th round. I think this is a comfortable spot to do in the 9th round. 6th round, my bad. After that is Chris Godwin, Russell Wilson, Damian Harris, who I already described what the worries about him are in this upcoming year with his counterpart, Rashad Bateman, the number 1 wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, Adam Thielen, who's being talked about as a red zone weapon for the Minnesota Vikings this year, TJ Hawkinson, who I think you can fade, Darnell Mooney, the number 1 wide receiver for the Bears. Listen, they have to throw to someone, and Justin Fields has been showing out, and it looks like he's ready to take the next step. I understand that team may be rebuilding, but Justin Fields may be good for fantasy football this year. Off the board after that is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Miles Sanders, Gabe Davis, the Mr. 4 touchdowns himself, someone who I think you could take in that range and be very comfortable with. Dallas Goedert, Tom Brady, you can always take in the 7th round and potentially get top 5 upside with him. Juju Smith-Schuster, so taking the shot on that wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs offense, DeAndre Hopkins and Cordell Patterson, and this puts you back on the clock. So at this point, I think I'm going to run back to, let's see, there's the running back position where I'm going to dive right down the board and jump someone who you may not even get at this point in the draft, but he's staring at me in the face, and I have taken in many drafts. It's Dameon Pierce, who was going to be the number 1 running back for the Texans this year. They showed their hand when they rested him in the 2nd preseason game, and they moved Marlon Mack down to the practice squad. Listen, he's got nice upside. He does absolutely nothing wrong that you would hate with any running back. He's good at blocking. He's decent at catching the ball, and he's got great yards after initial contact. He's going to be a good running back for the Texans this year. It has nice high-end running back 2 upside for you. So do not be afraid to take Dameon Pierce in the 7th round of your draft. Maybe even call your shot in the 6th round. Nothing wrong with that. Off the board after that was Drake London, Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, Hunter Renfrow, Dawson Knox, and Elijah Moore, someone you can steal potentially in the 8th round, and I was hoping was going to fall back to me. But that was not the option, so let's see what we can do here. I could go get the Lizard King. Devonta Smith is staring at me. After that is Ayuk. I think there's someone else I'm going to get in the round after that. So, you know what? Let's go with the Lizard King here, who could potentially be the number 1 wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Not necessarily, may not be the case, but in the 8th round, well, let's get those first 2 games out of the way and get those nice points. I hope he keeps that number 1 wide receiver job. He's shown when his counterpart was out of games that he could pick up the slack, and let's hope that's the case. Off the board after that was Zach Ertz, Devontae Smith, Walker for Seattle, Chase Edmonds, who is a great pick in the 8th round if you need a running back, Christian Kirk, who could be a possession receiver, high-end possession receiver, and get absolutely peppered with targets this year. Trey Lance, who I am still very high on, and I think will do good, even though Garoppolo is his backup. Devin Singletary, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett, Bills defense, way too damn early for a defense, but it's still up here. Dak Prescott, Rams defense, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, and Treylon Burks. Guys, if you have defenses and kickers, punt them until the last 2 rounds. That is just a strategy you always want to take. Let's see the best values on the board here. I still have not taken a tight end, but I really like what I see at the running back position here. And his name is Ramondre Stevenson. As I already said earlier, he's got potentially that early down role. If Harris fades a little bit, he could take that job, and you could have another nice flex option there. Off the board after that is Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Melvin Gordon, Kadarius Toney, who's not a bad pick in the 10th round, James Cook, and Pat Freiermuth. Good tight end. You know what? Let's make another podcaster on this show very happy by selecting Cole Kmet in the 10th round, another tight end that could potentially be in the top 10 and get peppered with targets this year. Off the board after Cole Kmet is Robert Woods, the number 1 wide receiver for the Titans, Chase Claypool, Baltimore Ravens defense, Mike Gesicki, Garrett Wilson, who I'm hoping, as we've already talked about, there's our number 1 wide receiver for the Jets. They're talking about him potentially being Odell, so that would be nice. Don't think he will be right away, but we will see. George Pickens, who is showing out, and I believe will take that number 2 wide receiver job for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Tampa Bay Bucks, Michael Carter, who is being talked about as a sleeper. Alexander Madison, who's been in recent trade rumors, don't think he will be traded. He probably will remain with the Vikings. Sky Moore, Julio Jones, who is someone you could throw a flyer on due to the injuries going on with the Tampa Bay Bucks currently. And he likes throwing. Tom Brady likes throwing to veterans. And Julio is a decent veteran. San Francisco defense, James Robinson, Tyler Boyd, Kirk Cousins, and Albert O. So let's see the best values on the clock currently in this spot. Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely give me Marquez Valdes-Scantling in this spot. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a high target to take here because, listen, you take weapons that are part of high-powered offenses this late in the draft. He's got a 3-year contract with the Chiefs, so the money's talking here. This is the smoke. He could be a piece of that Chiefs offense, so take the shot on him this late in the draft. Off the board after that is Nyheim Hines, Darrell Henderson, Dallas Cowboys defense, and Hunter Henry. So I am back on the clock. 15 rounds. I am going to take a backup quarterback here. You don't always have to take a backup quarterback, especially if your benches aren't very deep. I'm going to take another quick look, actually, and see what else we got there. Just to give you guys an idea of who you could potentially take at quarterback here, Jameis Winston's a decent option. Tua with the weapons, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Tua, but if you are, take a shot at him, I guess. But I think I would rather have, and the phone's acting up, so just give me 1 second to draft Justin Fields, hopefully. Yeah, I'm going to draft Justin Fields as my backup QB because of the rushing upside. Off the board after that was Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Higbee, Tua Tagovailoa, Rashad White, Indianapolis Colts defense, Isaiah Spiller. And as my phone keeps effing up, I'll keep reading them off to you. Brian Robinson, who I am hoping for a week 5 return. Listen, guys, if he's not being drafted because of what's going on with the injury, they're talking about him potentially coming back in week 5 or 6. Throw him on your pup. See if you get something out of him. It's another player you can throw on your pup and then get another freebie off waivers. They could potentially break out for your team. And if they don't do nothing, cut them, try someone else. Use your pup in week 1 and 2 potentially as an extra roster spot if you don't need to put someone else getting hurt there. If you've got that open spot, potentially use and get someone off of waivers. After that is David Njoku, Devontae Parker's, Romeo Doubs, decent pick still late. Tyler Algier, who could have some work in that Falcons backfield. Mark Ingram, and this puts me back on the clock. All right, so I've got 2 rounds before I'm going to end up taking my defense. So I am looking far down this board to see what I could potentially do. Give me Isaiah Pacheco all day at the running back position there. Could carve himself out a nice piece of backfield in that Chiefs backfield because their starter has been disappointing now for a few years. They may be looking to get someone else worked in there. Off the board after that was the Broncos defense. Rondale Moore, Christian Watson, John Doxson, nice speed there. Irv Smith, who they have been talking about his injury. He has not practiced in a few weeks. They said he's going to be ready for week 1, but it may be a slow start for him. Khalil Herbert, if he ends up getting into that role with the Bears, should David Montgomery go down, he is going to be excellent for your team. He showed in a small amount of work last year that he was excellent. Potentially take him as an opposite cuff. You don't always have to take him as David Montgomery's cuff, but if he's there for you, potentially take him. He could be good for your team. Let's take a look at what's left on the board. I've got a nice amount of running backs. I haven't taken a wide receiver here in a few rounds, so let's see what's on the board. You know what? I am going to take – got a few toss-ups here. Isaiah McKenzie, slot wide receiver for the Bills, potentially could be hurt for week 1. Already taken a few rookies here. You know what? Give me Jameson Williams. I can add him, as I said, to the pup and potentially get someone off of waivers, maybe like an Isaiah McKenzie, a Jalen Tolbert. God forbid if Watkins breaks out. I don't think that would be the case. Pierce is a nice option there too. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jordan Palmer, if there's an injury to Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. There's a lot of decent options in that later part of the draft. These are just some names that you could potentially consider for your late ends of your drafts. Off the board after that is Trevor Lawrence, Jamal Williams, J.D. McKissick, Zamir White, who is being talked about as potentially getting work with the Raiders. They don't always like Josh Jacobs, and this new coaching staff has been allowing him to play in the preseason late in the games. That was something to pay attention to. So maybe Zamir White's going to be potentially taking work from him. Jacoby Myers, good late pick. Ronald Jones, who almost didn't make the roster of the Chiefs, and I don't think is a good late pick. Jameson Williams, Kenny Galladay. On the turn after that is Robert Tonyan, DJ Chark, Raheem Mostert, Chuba Hubbard, Isaiah McKenzie, who I said is a decent waiver option, Noah Fant, Gerald Everett, Sammy Watkins, and now I'm going to take my defense and see what's there. I am going to look at the Browns defense here. They've got some nice matchups in the first 4 weeks and have matchups against quarterbacks that aren't very proven. They're a decent defense here, and they can at least be streamed through the first 4 weeks comfortably, and you may have what you like there. So don't be afraid to take the Browns defense at the end of your draft. Off the board after that is someone I already talked about, Jalen Tolbert, Mecole Hardman, and Mac Jones. All right, guys, I'll go over this team really quick and just lay down what we got here. In these 15-round PPR draft, I started it with Dalvin Cook, PPR monster, Alvin Kamara, PPR monster. We then have potentially our number one wide receiver in Michael Pittman, Jaylen Waddle, who is that high-end wide receiver 2 potential possession monster as well. Mike Williams, who's going to be the number one wide receiver, I believe, this year for the Los Angeles Chargers. I believe him and Keenan Allen are going to kind of be opposites, but I think they will have the similar outlooks this year. Jalen Hurts has a nice rushing upside. New weapon, whether you believe in that weapon or not, but I do like his rushing upside. Dameon Pierce is going to be the starter for the Houston Texans, so I love him in the 7th round. Good luck getting him in the 7th round. He's been rising up boards. Allen Lazard in the 8th round is the number one wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. I hope it stays that way this season, but for now, we at least know he's the number one. So good option there at wide receiver. Ramondre Stevenson, another one I'm taking a shot on here. Could get more work at the running back 1 spot. That's what you do when you get to those mid-rounds, take shots on people. Cole Kmet can be peppered with targets from the Chicago Bears. Nice value there. Marquez Valdez scaling, a former Green Bay wide receiver, moves over to Chiefs, another high-powered offense. Showed that he could have some fantasy value with the Packers in a few games. You know, as Patrick Mahomes throwing to him, new 3-year contract. It's going to be on the field. He's a good blocking wide receiver. Could work out good for your team. Justin Fields is a backup QB. Again, you don't always have to take a backup QB. You can always stream them. But I just wanted to show the flexibility with the rosters. Justin Fields could be good for you this year. A lot of leagues he's being taken off waivers. I like him in this spot, though, too. Love the rushing upside for him. He's been showing out during preseason. Looks pretty good. The Bears' offense looks a little bit more competent than it actually initially did. So if you want to take him in the back end of your draft and you're a Bears fan like someone on our podcast, like JJ, go ahead and take him there. Isaiah Pacheco could get rushing work, so taking a running back this late and taking your shot in one, absolutely all right in the 13th round. If he does nothing in the first few weeks, you can drop him, pick up someone else. I ended up picking up Jameson Williams in the 14th round. He's currently on the pup for the Lions. They're talking about potentially him coming back early. He showed out as potentially the most talented wide receiver in this draft before this injury. The injury is what made him drop in dynasty drafts and in redrafts. So drop him on the pup. See if you get something out of him in a week or two after that. If not, you could drop him, do something else on the spot. And as I said before, the Browns defense is someone that you could stream for the first month, and it would be good for your team because they're going up against questionable quarterbacks and questionable offenses who have not proven anything for the 2022 season. Guys, if you like what you see on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show. Don't be afraid to ask us questions. You can leave them down in the comment if you weren't part of this live show. We love getting back to you guys. This is an interactive show. You can also listen to us in audio formats at Spotify, Google, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, absolutely anywhere they play podcasts. Feel free to also listen to us at www.garbagetimeff.com. You can also leave us voicemails there. All you do is go to the right side of the website, click on the bar, and scream into your phone or your laptop, and we will play the voicemail live on the show and answer whatever comments or whatever shit talking you're doing over the comments live for the show. As we said, you can always ask questions in any format. You can, if you're too shy and don't want to leave it down in the comments or do it on our live shows, you can do it at Instagram at Garbage Time Fantasy Football, where you will get answers fairly quickly. We check that pretty daily. And you can also talk shit to us at and Twitter at garbage_time FF. Guys, I wish you guys all the luck in your upcoming drafts, especially for tomorrow. This will be uploaded in audio format very shortly if you need to listen to it right before your guys' draft and refer to this board. Join us next Wednesday. I'm sure we'll have a Monday or Tuesday episode too, but specifically next Wednesday, we are in the Megala Bowl, and we will be live broadcasting that draft for you guys, where I'm sure it'll be more than just me throwing out our opinions as to who we should be taking in that big style tournament draft. We just did this with the BDG3 tournament. It was a hell of a ride, and it was going to be a good time. So, guys, get into that tournament if you haven't to, and play along with us, and maybe someone from the Heckling Fandom can win. Anyway, have a great weekend. Do good on your drafts this weekend. If you're doing it Monday, do great on that holiday too. All right, guys, have a good night. And if you're at the Jets game, see you there.